Welcome to Pencils and Lipstick. This is a podcast for indie authors. I'm Kat Caldwell, novelist, short story writer, and book coach. Here on Pencils and Lipstick, we're obsessed with all things story, and it is my goal to bring you the writing tips that you need
everyone.
to
Welcome
make
back to
your
Pencils and
novel
Lipstick. This is
come to
episode
life.
273 of the podcast, and we are in mid-June already, although outside it feels a bit like April here in DC. Raining a lot. Perfect day to just sip tea and read a book, honestly. So today I have an interview for you. I have Hannah Jordan. Be sure to check out the show notes because there's going to be a link to her books. The first one she is promoting this coming week for free, so you can check her out. That is a great way to check out a new writer. She has a really different, well, I don't know if I should say really, but she has a bit of a different story as she came into writing. She's done a lot in the last few years, and she has, been very strategic in the way that she brings out her books, which I'm always impressed with. All you all who are very strategic, I'm trying to learn from you instead of just being done. Let this go, So I encourage you to stick around and listen to the episode. I have had quite a few people petition to be on the show lately, and if you haven't seen my reply to you, check your email because the replies have gone out this weekend. I am looking for guests for the fall. So after the next 2 weeks, I have 2 more guests coming in, and then we're going to take a break for the summer. That's just how it has to be. I just can't keep up with it all the way over in Spain when I'm with my family over there and getting my kids set up for camp and all the things. So that is how we do it. We take off July and August. And honestly, I know you all think that you're going to listen, but I think also the listenership kind of goes down a little bit. And I don't want to do that to my guests. I want them to have the full attention of the full audience of Pencils and Lipstick. So definitely check your email if you have petition to be on the show. You do have to have 3 books out in order to come on as a writer. Now, if you have like software or things that serve writers or authors or marketing or things like that, you don't have to have 3 books out. You don't even have to be a writer, as you know. But if you do want to talk strictly writing and the craft of writing and storytelling and things like that, you either have to be a pretty, a coach who's been in it and has studied it, or you have to have written and brought out 3 books. Okay. So those are kind of the details of getting on Pencils and Lipstick. And that is mostly to serve you, the audience. I think it's amazing when we come out with our debut book, right? But a lot of times there's still a bit of a learning curve to it. And that's actually why I started this podcast, because when I had 2 books out and I thought, oh my gosh, I really have a lot more to learn. And so that is what this podcast tries to serve is, those of us who want to learn more from those who have gone before us. And so you have to have gone before, let's say, okay? So that is the criteria. You can always fill out my contact form on catcaldwell.com. That's probably the easiest way to do it. If you're on my newsletter, you can just hit reply to any newsletter, which a couple of you have done that as well. That's amazing. That's awesome. If any of you are ARC readers who have, as I transition so abruptly, but if any of you who are listening were part of my ARC for stepping across the English channel, it's very long, across the English channel, thank you so much. You guys have been amazing. There are 18 reviews up on Amazon as of now, which is an amazing rate. That's like 18% of you got it done, got it there on Amazon. Plus, lots of people, are not on Amazon, so there are more on Goodreads. I haven't checked right now, but it's just awesome. Oh gosh, my hair is crazy. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sorry. I didn't check that before. So just you guys did an amazing job. I really appreciate it. It has been a eye-opening experience to have an ARC team and for people to just sort of know, I guess, what I wanted and what other people could do. And it was really fun. I've done this for other people, but never for myself. I think we always do a little bit less for ourselves sometimes. That's kind of my personality. And so it was really fun to do it with you all. And a couple of you have decided to stick on for the next book, which really motivates me to get it done, which is amazing. So right now, because the arc is over, there might be some people kind of coming in who have personally contacted me about it, but the arc is over and I have the print books on their way as I record this. And then I have all the material there to make everybody's book box, which I think is a really fun, not too expensive way to say thank you. I think in the end, let me see. For this book, every book we're going to round up to about $5 each for author copy. And, we could probably round up to like $5.50, including shipping, because I think I paid $18 for the box of them. So yeah, so $18 for 30 of them. So a little bit more than 50 cents. Let's just go up to $6. Okay. So $6 per book. Plus material would probably be another $5 plus shipping out. We're just going to round up to $5. It'll probably be less than that, right? So that is $16. We could round that up to 20. Like, let's just be sure, right? My accounting's not great. I'd prefer to round up. So, I will write a little hand note on there. I don't go crazy. Okay. I know some authors do. And I know some authors have set themselves up to then have to go crazy, I guess, or they think that they have to. Or some authors I've even heard say because other authors go crazy, they feel like they have to. And let me tell you, you don't have to feel like anything. You don't have to do anything. If somebody is on your ARC team to get stuff, that might not be the person to be on your ARC team. So let me break it down again for anyone who hasn't been listening. An ARC team a lot of times is about numbers. That's like anything in the selling world, and it's the same in the book world. My expectation was 10% of the ARC team would respond, with the hope that 20% would respond. Okay, that seems to be about the right expectation to put yourself out as an author. That seems pretty low. Yes, it depends on, and this is the first time around. If you have built up a team, you might have a better one. But believe me, the more that you work with, especially people that you don't know, you really don't know them other than through email, your book is not top priority in their world. Okay. So again, I would say about 20 to 25% responded, whether it was at BookBubs, Goodreads, or Amazon. And I tried to be very chill and understanding about the fact that my book, again, is not the top priority of everybody's life, right? So your expectations, you have to keep realistic. And yes, it feels like a lot of work. You're giving away 100 books for 20 to 25% return, but that's how it goes anywhere. So if you sign up for Book Sirens, if you sign up for Book Sprouts, if you sign up for any review team in which you can't really see those authors and they're not really connected with you, at least in my experience, many do not finish up the job. Okay. They don't end up reviewing. Maybe they don't end up reading. And I know all these sites are trying to sort of keep these readers from getting new books if they don't review. But I'm not sure how that's working out for them. I have tried them a couple times and it doesn't, there seems to be some leeway there. Okay. So anyway, this is just my experience. I know other people have other ARC team experiences, but remember when you listen to authors who have been around or who have personal assistants who run ARC teams for them, if their numbers are higher, it might be because they've been around longer and they've used the same ARC team longer. They have somebody working for them, or their numbers are higher on the ARC team. Okay. So I gave myself a limit on this is the amount of time I want 100. Next time I might go for 200, but you know, have normal expectations here, guys. Okay. I gave people a month to read it. I gave people extra time to review it. They did not have to have it reviewed the day that it published on Amazon, because I just know, like, people need leeway in their life. And then I sent out reminders, but I didn't inundate them. So actually tomorrow I will send out another reminder, even though they had a couple of reminders last week. I will send out a reminder to anyone who didn't respond with a review for a book box that they have. Like in August, I will send another round of book boxes in case they do actually review it. Because again, I don't think the point of an ARC team is to do everything on your timeline. I mean, yes, but no, because in the end, if they haven't reviewed it yet, something has happened and they haven't gotten around to reading it, or possibly maybe just reviewing it, and they could do it right away. But if they haven't gotten around to reading it, then they haven't gotten around to reading it, right? And because I leave in July, but even if you don't leave, you need kind of a breathing space, right? You don't need to be saying every time somebody sends you in the review that you're going to rush to make the book box. If that's how you want to do it, that's fine. But I'm giving, like, it's going to go out this next week and then another one in August. So those who want to read it, or who are in the middle of it, if they review it by August, that still benefits me, right? That still is adding reviews to the algorithm and showing people that people are continuing to, other readers, that people are continuing to read it, they're finishing it. And even if they didn't get it done, like for the ARC team date, that they still wanted to continue to read it. And then they bothered, honestly, they took their time to review it. And that benefits me. And so I don't mind spending, the $18 to $20 to send them a book box as a thank you for that. Okay. That is my choice. That, you can run your ARC team however you want. But this is probably how I will continue to run it, with 2 different times of book boxes and thank yous being sent out. And my book boxes will never become insane. Again, so let me get back to the point in the beginning. There are romance readers and romantasy readers and fantasy readers who now expect book boxes that are costing beyond $50 each box. Now, if that's something that the author can do because they make that amount of money, that's amazing. The majority of us can't do that. And for you to feel like you have to do that, I say, no, you need to reevaluate. We need to reevaluate those feelings. We don't have to do that. Yes, we want to make it nice, but it is a thank you to people for doing something. You already gave them something free, your hard work, and allowed them to be part of something. And this is just an extra thank you. You start adding in heavy things, candles, slippers, t-shirts, all that stuff. You're not getting a return on your investment that is worth that much. And I just don't know if you can afford that. I don't want you to start spending money that you haven't yet made, okay, just to think that you have to keep up with the Joneses in the author world. It's just not possible to do that. I know that it can feel like you have to, but if you can't, you can't. And I refuse to be, that person. I know even for a lot of people, $20 per book box is a lot of money, right? So if you can't, you can't. You can send them a little card, a thank you. Just set up the expectation at the beginning. If you're not going to give out a book box, just say, at this moment, I can't give out book boxes, but I truly appreciate you. And please send me your address so that I can send you a card, because it's just all about the expectation. And I think most readers fully understand that they don't, quote unquote, deserve a giant book box. While it's fun to get, I love them as much as the next person. That's not why I read ARC copies, right? I read them to help the author to get a new fabulous book before anybody else. And yes, the traditional world has like kind of ruined this, and TikTok has kind of ruined this. And, I think it's just all about being honest with your audience, setting the right expectations, and just sort of taking a deep breath and saying, I can't keep up with these other book authors because they're farther beyond me and they're making a living wage from their books. I really hope to one day be there. I hope that you'll join me on the ride. Okay, so that's my lecture for you today. I didn't actually plan to talk to you guys about that, but I think it's an important point to make. I've heard a couple, especially romance authors, kind of lament the fact that other authors are giving out all these amazing things and that now the readers expect it. And I would say, well, their readers expect it, but there are literally millions of readers out there. So if you can't do that, don't raise the expectations of your ARC readers. Keep them where you are. Be honest, be yourself. I honestly think even if I do end up my goal would be to make the majority of my money through books instead of through coaching or editing. I don't know that I want to make those crazy book boxes because I don't know that if I want to contribute to that expectation, if you know what I mean. I think that I don't like the idea that the book world is getting kind of tainted with almost payment. I don't know. That might come back to bite me. I know somebody might be upset with me. I don't actually care if people do this. If they want to, if they are generous in spirit and they just want to really give back to their ARC readers because maybe their ARC readers do more for them. Maybe they do unboxings in their Instagram or TikToks or whatever, and they just feel like they want to give it. That is fine. I'm not really talking about that. What I'm talking about is when that sort of weird middle ground where people start expecting things, especially from authors who just aren't there yet and can't afford it and then feel sort of left out. And I don't like that. Of course, we can't manage everybody's feelings all the time. So again, when you gather your ARC readers, just set the expectations. Okay. While I can't afford a book box right now, and I wish I could, please send me your address so that I can write you a personalized note. Okay. I would think that would be fabulous. Honestly, I think that would be so fun to get a personalized note from a fellow author. I mean, that actually takes more time than putting together a book box, quite frankly. You're just like sitting there thinking about what to write to your ARC readers. That's fabulous. So I think sometimes we have to think outside the box as indie authors, and especially indie authors who are starting out, right? There's also another way. You don't have to do a personalized book box. You can actually you could probably put your book up on Book Vault, other pay on demand sites, and you can send copies that aren't signed to them. And that would probably cost you still $7 each. But it's less than 20, right? It's less than 18. So, but they're not signed. So, there's all these different choices that we have to make. Again, just set the expectation. Make sure everybody's on the same page. And the main point is just to thank them and be like grateful and make them feel part of the team because really we need them, right? So I was talking to somebody last night. If you don't know, I live in DC. And so every time I go to a party, our birthday party, which was last night, everyone gets introduced as they're the CEO, they're the CFO, they're the COO. They work in, state, they work in whatever they're admitting to, World Bank. I assume everyone's CIA around here, but they're, military, Pentagon, State Department, FEMA, whatever. And then they turn to me and they go, she's an author. And it's funny because everyone turns. And some people are like, lame? Is that even a thing? Sometimes people say, like, who do you write for? Meaning they think I'm a journalist, which always makes me laugh because no. And then I have the occasional person, usually women, who are like, really? What do you write? So it's always a, a mixed reaction. And it's very funny. But I was talking last night to somebody about the review process, and she's an architect who used to work for state. Now she works by herself, and she has an Airbnb. And so she was talking about the reviews, and I was talking about reviews as an author. And it's so interesting to me how our world does not translate into the the reader world outside of kind of the inner arc circle. Most readers don't understand how important, I think they can understand how important a review is. Most of them don't understand that you can be review bombed. They don't understand that um, this idea of like having your own star system that doesn't happen outside of the author world. A lot of times, like, nobody goes to their Airbnb and says, like, first let me explain my stars and how I give out stars. Because a lot of times reviewers are reviewing the book for themselves, but they're also reviewing it for those who follow them. And then they feel like they have to live up to a certain standard. I know a lot of reviewers who are like, I never give out fives because that means that it's perfection. And I think, well, that's crazy. Five to me means like I would recommend somebody read it, like that's just, I'm of a different generation possibly. Whereas some people are like three means that I would recommend it. But that's interesting because you would never go to a 3-star Airbnb, right? Like it's a very interesting, intricate, very chaotic and confusing system that we have as authors and readers now with these stars, right? And she was admitting to me that she won't look at a book if it's below 4.3 star rating. And I thought, yeah, I can see why. And yet, for a lot of readers who are kind of up in this like book talk world, they're giving out 3 stars for books that they would recommend. But it's interesting how outside of that, the average reader who's just looking for a book is looking for 4.3 and above. It's interesting, right? Like, I don't know what to do about that, but it's interesting. She was saying, like, if I got a 3-star for my Airbnb, I wouldn't get booked probably the rest of the year, and I'd have to do some really heavy like marketing. And I was like, that's insane. So she has another person's Airbnb down the road, and they got a 4-star, and now their rating is a 4.95. And she said ever since then, her Airbnb is full and their Airbnb is only half full for a 4.95. Guys, it's a very, so if you translate that into the reading world, it's kind of crazy, right? Okay, so if you are a reader with your own star review system, that is fine. You can do whatever you want. Everyone can do whatever they want. But just know that the average person outside of this sort of like inner reading author circle doesn't, they won't even go down to read the reviews. If it's below a 4 point, I would say a 4.1. I was being generous, and she said 4.3. Okay. I don't know what to do about that. It is what it is. And this is why it's a bit of a numbers game. You just need more reviews. You need more people to read it, more people to review it, more, because the number of reviews will just help your average. It's just how it is. All right. So anyway, that wasn't even what I was going to talk to you guys about, but I feel like I've talked long enough. It is June 16th as this goes out, and we are talking with Hannah Jordan. She is a spicy romance writer who has come out since COVID with her writing, her books, her publishing, and it's pretty amazing how she has organized herself. She's gotten her writing done, gotten her marketing done, gotten her books out. It's so fun to listen to. She has quite a few tips for you guys. If you guys didn't catch last week, it's episode 272. I give you 13 ways to keep writing and working on your story through the summer. So check that out. One of them is directly from Hannah, is one of her suggestions. So check out last week's. After you check out this week's, be sure to check out the show notes below, because you'll be directed to her romance series. where the at the end of this week, it will be the first one will be free. So you can check her out, read her book, have a nice little beach read. All right, so let's get into the interview. All right. Hi, Hannah. Nice to have you on the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to, how did we meet each other? Book exchange, TikTok? I
We
don't really know.
actually we actually met each other at a mutual friend's book launch,
Okay.
virtual book
Oh,
launch.
that's right. Victoria's book launch. Oh, that's
Mhm.
awesome. Okay. The author world is so funny.
It is.
It's so fun to meet other people. So I was just like, well, let's have you on. I haven't had a romance writer on in a while, and there are so many people who want to write romances. So let's talk about romance. I know you write other things, so we'll get into that as well. But how did you start out when you decided that you were going to write fiction?
I've always written it.
Yeah.
I grew up in Appalachia, so there wasn't a ton of activities outside of like just being outside.
Yeah.
So I always read, I always wrote little stories.
Was
Fun
it
fact,
always love stories?
no, no.
Okay.
Everything from poems, which I'm really bad at, to short stories. And fun fact, I'm actually have a learning disability in spelling. So my first kind of playing around with words was to write around words I couldn't spell.
Oh,
So
that's so funny. What a good
yeah,
exercise.
I know. And now that's not really a thing. It's called hyperlexia. So a lot of times people with it are actually very good with reading skills, writing skills, but they just can't spell
That's
English.
so funny.
So nowadays you just have, spell check and Grammarly and all.
Yeah, but spell check will sometimes turn it into the
Oh
word
yeah.
that you don't want it to be. It's like, wait,
So
did I write
it's
that?
it's been interesting. But yeah, so I've always been a writer.
Have you always been a storyteller? Like, is storytelling big in Appalachia?
Very much so.
Okay.
Usually oral, like it's
Okay.
normally, a lot of people telling stories. I'm a little more introverted, so I never get the stories out as well speaking as I would writing them down. And there's some very colorful storytellers where I'm from. So, it's very performative in a
Right.
way that I just can't do. So, yeah, I've always written. It's just been something I've always done. And I don't even know that I would call it a compulsion so much as it's just part of who I am. It's
Yeah.
just, I've
You just
always,
like to do it.
yeah, just always done it.
So when did you come out? When were you like, I'm going to turn this into an actual book? Like, I want to write a book and sell it. Because that's a
Yeah,
whole different thing than like
it is.
having
So,
fun writing.
yes, and I'm very practical. So when I went to college, my dad was like, you have to get a marketable degree.
Oh, I bet we're from the same era.
Yeah, so I'm double majored in English and marketing because I
Oh,
took
look
it
at you. Of course.
very literal. But I went on to get an MFA. So the first kind of
Okay.
full-length book I wrote was a literary fiction MFA. And I worked on this book for 10 years, editing, changing it. I've now come to the realization it was too literary to be romance and too romance to be literary.
Right.
And so that was my first attempt, I guess, at a full length work. I had more success with short stories and nonfiction. So I
Yeah.
published that pretty consistently. But as far as the first full length book I actually published was romance.
Okay. So when you're doing an MFA, do they pretty much want literary fiction?
Yes.
Really?
And
Do
I
they
don't
look
know if
down on
that's,
the genre fiction?
yeah, and you know what? I think that may have changed
Okay.
somewhat. I know that there's definitely more of a respect for the fact that if you want to make this your profession, you will probably at some point, more likely than not, end up in a genre. So I think maybe that's changed a little bit, but
So
at least
funny.
the program I was in and at the time that I was there, it was literary fiction or nothing. So there was kind of this hesitancy, I think, to even go into writing romance because of that. Because
Right. Of
I kind of
course.
had it, drilled into my head, like,
That
oh,
it's not real. It's
yeah, you're a literary
Fabio.
writer. Yeah, you're a literary writer. You're a literary writer. And
What do you think that means these days? Like literary writing? Because when I was growing up, it was whatever book I could get my hands on. Like my grandpa
yeah,
would take me to the library and he would be like, you're allowed to check out from this section. And then he would point out the section I wasn't allowed to go to. And like, I don't know. I just read whatever there was. I think I
mhm.
literally read the entire young adult section in that tiny library. But so what is literary fiction, I guess. And what was it then? What is it now? Has it changed? I don't know.
So I would say there's actually more crossover than people like to
Hmm.
admit. That's my that's
Who
my take on it. Just because, first and foremost, I started as a romance reader. And
Okay.
so when you read romance, right away when you're reading a book, you're like, this person can write, right? Like
Yes.
they're capable of writing literary fiction, whether they're doing it or not. That's not why they chose this genre. They love the genre, they love what they're writing, but they have a strong craft, a strong command on language. I'm thinking like L.J. Shin is one, and just really beautiful writing.
Like Lisa Kleypas, like
Yeah.
the
So
old writers. Oh,
right. So like some of it's just the focus on the words being really beautiful.
right.
That's in romance. It's not in romance. So I think a lot of times the stigma that surrounds it versus literary fiction are from people that have never read
Yeah.
romance.
It's
I
from
think
those covers. Remember those covers?
oh my gosh, yeah, the Rip Bodice. Yeah.
And those are
Yeah,
modeled. Like those are posed with real people. It's so funny. I
it
find it
was.
fascinating.
So yeah, I do think that it's sort of become a little more mainstreamed in that, I mean, when you get things like 50 Shades of Grey in the mainstream media, then
Yeah.
the less crazy ones are a little more, oh, I'm reading,
Yeah,
Colleen
they're
Hoover.
free to admit it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, I really think there isn't as much of a divide as people like to think there is.
Hmm.
There is more of a expectation within
Okay.
romance that certain things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Like
True.
you expect to at least have a happy for now ending. So
Hmm.
you know the ending. When you start out,
Right.
you're going to get somewhere. Literary fiction, you can kill them, you can, do horrible things to them
This is true.
so that to me is the one unbreakable rule
Yeah.
between the two genres is that you cannot do horrible things to your characters at the end. And, and I
Yeah.
just finished reading a literary fiction novel, and I was like, I feel so sad, like at the end of
Yeah,
it. And I
exactly.
feel like when you read romance at the end, you're usually like, oh, that's,
Oh, I'm so glad for them.
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like literary writers these days are trying to make you feel terrible about the world.
I
Like,
do, and it's sort of that gratuitous grief. That's, like it's just like how much can I hurt the reader?
yeah, there's
And
like the world is not being able to be fixed, and you're
yes,
gonna have to accept this. Like,
and that's one of the beautiful things about romance is that you can do all these horrible things, but at the end of the day, they're going to be okay. So
yeah, they have
so
to get
even
together.
so even when you're reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, she just got paralyzed. I just read that in a book. You still know it's
Wow,
okay. It's okay because
it's
she's gonna
okay.
have the love
Yeah,
of her life. So to me, that's like the only real defining difference
yeah,
between
I think that's true. But
um
and there are still people who, well, I guess literary fiction, it can be any story, right? Like it's weird to me because I love writing contemporary fiction,
mhm.
which doesn't always have to do with romance, but it's a really difficult genre to hit because
Yeah.
everyone's
And
like, I don't know what this is. It's
I
just a
think some
story.
people's definition of literary fiction is even more narrowed, and
Mm,
it's the idea that the emphasis is always on language, and
yeah.
there's even like a self-referential quality where you're talking about books or you're talking about writing, and it's very meta, where you're, sort of examining
That's
written
interesting.
word.
I hadn't
Um,
thought of that. But
yeah,
you're
so
right. There's a
the
lot that
real purist, I think that's what they would call literary fiction.
you're so right. They're always writers or they own a bookstore or
Mhm.
oh, that's
So
interesting.
there's some sort of commenting on literature or there's literary allusions, which you can find in romance. They have them in romance
Of
quite often.
course. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so
But
funny.
there's usually some sort of an allusion to an earlier work or, there's little inside things that
Right.
only,
They have an obsession with
yes,
somebody.
somebody, and there's like, if you're well read, you'll pick it up and be like,
Yes.
I
And
understand that.
then and only then will you pick
Yes.
this up.
So I will say, even when I was in that space, I've always been someone who hated stuffy writing. I've always
Hmm.
been someone that wanted the writing to be approachable,
Right.
and it could have various meanings, it could have layered meanings, but I never wanted it to feel inaccessible to anyone.
Right.
So that was just my style from the beginning, and that fit really well with romance because it is sort of that quick nice, fun read. So
Yes.
it did transfer
I don't
well.
need a dictionary to read.
Yeah,
And I consider myself semi-educated, but
yeah.
man, it gets me. And I will read anything, and I will read a lot more books than I will suggest others read because
Mhm.
I'm willing to read everything. But there's just something about coming across a word where you're just like, really, that's the
Yeah,
word you chose.
that's the one you're going to use. So, so I do think that that's certainly something.
Mm.
I, coming from Appalachia, I always had written almost in dialect a lot of times, like if
Oh,
I was
that's
reading
cool.
fiction. So I still write in the region that I'm from. I still
Okay.
have sort of that colloquial type of writing, but it's not quite as in your face, I would say, as it would have been before.
Okay. But
And
that book that you were writing, are you ever going to make it fully romance and bring it out, or is that kind of a done?
yeah,
Oh, you
that's
are.
actually the next series.
Oh,
I'm
goodness.
thinking of doing.
Okay.
So
Well, let's first talk about the
yeah.
first series. All right. So when you decided that you weren't going to do that literary book and you were going to go with romance, what did that look like? How did you just sit down one day and you're like, I think I'm going to become an
It
author?
was it was actually a dare.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So I have two really good writing friends that during the pandemic we set up weekly Zooms. And we still do this to this day, sometimes in person, thank God, sometimes on Zoom. But they knew I like to read romance and they kept saying, well, why haven't you written one? And I was like, oh, I'm a literary writer. I don't know. So finally,
It's hard
um,
to break that though,
it is.
because
That's sort of, this is what I'm supposed to be. And I guess it was January 2023. I
okay.
had earlier in the fall been, I don't want to say complaining. I don't want, because I'm not complaining about the fact that I have children. They're wonderful and I love them. But I could never do NaNoWriMo. So
Oh,
that,
no,
right.
it's the worst month ever. I mean, now it's gone, but it
Yeah,
is literally the
it's,
worst month
it's
ever.
terrible. And I live in New Jersey and they take a whole week off, like at the
Yeah.
beginning of November for I don't know what
Oh,
reason.
at the beginning,
Yeah.
plus
First,
Thanksgiving.
yeah.
Oh,
There's literally, I mean, it can never happen. So
no.
as long as I have kids in my house, it will never happen. And my friend's a single mom, same thing. She's like, it's never going to happen. And we were kind of down about it. And she was like, well, why does it have to be November? I was like,
Exactly.
right, it doesn't have to be November. And I was like, we should do January because January is depressing and no one wants to go anywhere anyway. And it's cold.
Literally. And no one's buying books because they
No
just
one's,
spent all their money.
yeah, no one's doing anything. Like I, for one, am like hobbled in because it's cold and sad and whatever. And it's something to get you through January because it's
Yeah.
a long, cold
Oh,
month.
I agree. Oh, that's a
So
great idea.
she was like, well, I have this paranormal romance I've been wanting to finish. You should write a romance. And I was like, no, I don't want romances. And she was like, no, we should do it. Like we should do it and we should bring my friend Jim along with us. Now, Jim is a published, very well-respected literary writer who had never read romance in his life, in his late 70s, right? And we talked this Appalachian man into writing a romance in
Oh
January
my
with us.
gosh.
So for a
All
month,
three of you together or
all
each?
three of us together, and we wrote separate ones.
Oh, that's
So
so funny.
yeah, so he wrote like I think it was a romantic suspense novel,
Oh, I want to read that.
and yeah, and I wrote a the first book in the series and
Okay.
the first draft of the first book
Which
of the
is a small town contemporary romance.
small town spicy romance. So I loved it. I loved it. Like every minute of it, I loved it. And I was shocked about how much fun it was to do
Yeah.
because when I write literary or I write even nonfiction, I would it's kind of felt like somebody was like yanking on my skin as I'm doing it. Like it's kind of painful. But the romance I just had fun. Like it was
Right.
writing something that I wanted to read and
Yes.
just absolutely loved it, fell in love with the characters. And for the first time, I plotted it because I had
Wow.
never plotted anything. I'm a short story writer. So I never, or I write nonfiction. So that's real. That happened. You don't, it's like you
Yeah.
maybe take out what you don't want to put in, but like it happened. It has a plot. So this was the first time I had like a big board and I had it all plotted out. And I
Oh,
did like,
that's fun.
yeah, PowerPoint, whole thing. And so I did in 1 month, we wrote each of us wrote a draft. And
Good for you.
so I'll never do that again.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot. I can do it in 6 weeks without wanting to lose my mind. Like
What
I,
what did that look like for your kids were probably elementary school?
Yes. So
What
I
did that look like
even
for you?
one even had COVID during it. Like
Oh,
it was
Lordy.
a thing. But they weren't babies, but they're,
Right.
would come. So basically if they were in school, I
You
was
wrote.
writing.
Okay.
So that
I
was that.
think a lot of writers, like that's a big thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you get it done? So that was pretty much all you did.
Yes.
I mean, because there was no marketing yet to do or
No.
anything like
So there
that.
was no formatting, no editing, no nothing like that. I helped my husband run his dental practice, so I was still doing
So
year-end
you were
accounting.
still, so you're still, yeah, okay. There you go.
But, that was so it was kind of a weird, going back and
A little
forth
bit
in
of a
that, but
brain
a
rest. But a
little
lot
bit.
of
But
people have other jobs or they're
yes.
stay-at-home moms or
And
whatever. And yeah,
honestly, it was good because you kind of, got out of your head for a little bit and then would go back. And there was a
right.
pressure of I have to sit down and do this because
Yeah.
I have to get the kids at this time, or, we have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So it did work. January was an awful month and nobody had a lot going on and we actually
So
managed. So
funny.
yeah.
So in 4 weeks you got it this time. So then what did you guys do? Did you read each other's stuff?
So we're always each other's alpha readers. So that first readers of anything that we
Wow.
do. So we all alpha read for each other. We made edits and around that
That's really
time,
fun though. Like
yeah.
I think that's a really good idea for anyone in their first book is to find
Oh
that
yeah.
that alpha reader, right? Just for
Absolutely. And they're very
feedback.
different from beta readers because beta readers
Yeah.
can just be readers.
Right.
I think alpha readers almost usually are writers just
Yeah.
because, they're
They know
more,
at least what to do,
yeah,
like
sort of. And we had been critiquing one another for years at that
okay.
point. So there's no
There's some
sunshine
trust
windows.
there. Yeah,
Right. So
right.
that they'll just tell you right away, like, this is bad or this is
Yeah.
whatever. And, we did that. It actually ended up, I applied to the Romance Writers of America's
Right.
mentor program and it was
Okay.
accepted. So
Nice.
second draft went through Jeannie Watt, who is a cowboy romance writer. I don't write cowboy, I don't write any of that, but I wanted her, like I applied specifically for her because I thought, okay, small town,
Hmm.
it carries over, it's
Yeah,
that
for sure.
similar kind of insulated environment. So,
Yeah.
and she was so generous and kind. Like she read it twice, I think, and went through feedback with me.
Oh, that's nice.
And part of that was because I was coming from literary writing. I had never written a spicy scene ever, right? So I'm like, okay, is this cringy? Is this good?
Right.
Yeah. So that was like a big thing. Like I needed somebody to read it to be like, is this,
Is this how we do this?
is this how we do this? I mean, I've read plenty of them, but like I'd never written one. So the beats, like there's a very
Hmm.
consistent sort of expectation. So having someone who had written so many other books
Right.
read it and give me that feedback was incredible. And I also met other people in the program that I
Mhm.
still beta read with to this day.
Oh, that's so nice. So that's definitely something you would recommend people look into.
Yeah, I do. And I'm not in the romance writers anymore because I'm kind I don't want to say I haven't outgrown it, but I'm just kind of doing my own thing.
Yeah, once you
Um,
learn you got to make
so
way for new people, right?
yes, but that mentee program was really,
Okay.
and I didn't realize the group had a huge upheaval. And I was not
Right, I
aware of
remember.
this
Yeah,
when I entered it. So it was still kind of in a little bit of an upheaval when I was
that's
there.
funny.
But my personal experience with my particular mentor and I don't want to sound selfish, but I got way more out of it than I would have, kind of expected. And
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, it's a big group. I don't think that we can judge a big group that are individuals on, I can't even remember what happened. There was some, I think the president or whatever,
It was
but
I didn't even know any of this at the time. Like at
I
the
usually try to stay out of that stuff just
same.
because it will taint you. It might taint your view, but really it comes down to it's just a club of people who are like, we write the same genre. Like I'm not responsible for whatever somebody else says
Yeah.
or does.
And I will say that has been one of the really surprising things about romance is how absolutely generous
Yeah.
other romance writers are with one another.
I think they're the most generous. Yeah.
It is such a collaborative, supportive group of people.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
they're willing to swap newsletters or
Yeah. Even big ones for
yeah,
like new ones. It's when Twitter was just starting, I could talk to like Courtney Milan, and like it was just crazy. They've always been just very kind and generous, and
Yeah.
maybe it has to do with the people on the outside just sort of like look down their noses at them, or I don't
You
even
know,
know.
I honestly think it's more that romance readers are voracious.
Oh, so true.
So there's not the competition that you
That might
think
be.
of.
Yeah,
It's
because
more like, you know what? I have readers and we write similar things, and my readers would like your readers would like my work.
that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even Bella Matthews, I met her one time and she was like, "Oh, I'll put you in my newsletter." And I was like, "That is unreal," because we both had our book in the same small South Jersey bookstore. So
Oh, so cool.
yeah, and so it's just, and she's not the only one. Like, it just seems like people are very generous with their um, social media support or newsletter support, or even just like, hey, your releases that, and it's just a very warm environment. I
Yeah.
don't know how else to say it, but it is the best writing environment I think I've ever
Yeah.
been
I
in.
agree. I agree. The majority of them. And I think now they're getting a little more like credit.
Yeah,
Some of my favorites still don't get enough credit. I feel
no,
like
I know, I know.
they should like republish them or whatever. But so you came out. Why did you decide to go indie?
I did.
Why did you decide to go indie?
So the interesting thing about the failed novel, I'm not going to call it failed.
Failed.
I'm going to call it work in
But
progress.
not yet published.
Yeah, it actually got two publication offers, and I turned them both down.
Oh, wow.
And it was because they were small independent presses, and it felt like they were going to take huge chunks of the royalties,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I wasn't going to get anything back in return.
If they sold it.
Right, if they sold it. So there wasn't like a huge marketing arm behind them. They could edit, but I'm like, well, you can hire an editor.
Mhm.
Cover design, I could hire a cover design person. Formatting, you can get formatting. So I didn't see what they were contributing back to me.
Except if it is literary, if you are going literary, you're
Yes.
better off with a publisher. It
Yes.
still doesn't mean that it will sell.
100%,
It
because
is
there
hard.
is this idea of gatekeeping within the literary community
Well,
that
because a lot of readers,
Mhm.
their readers aren't going to go look for
Right.
it.
Whereas I think in romance, you have people like Lucy Score who still publishes her own books, so
Yeah.
it's very accepted in
Right.
romance because
Right.
it's seen as more of a business decision than a value decision. So it's not that you
Yeah.
couldn't possibly pursue it and get it published through a house. It's that unless it's a big five, unless it's something big that they're going to really put a lot of marketing arm behind or name recognition, it's not necessarily going to equate back to the sales for you.
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, also, I'm uniquely positioned in that I have a business degree, I have a marketing degree.
Yeah. You are
So
helping your husband already with his business. It's
I
like,
know how to do accounting.
I
So
can do
it's
that.
kind of the really nitty gritty nuts and
Mhm.
bolts parts of it. I felt weren't as threatening. Like I
Yeah.
felt like, and believe me, I screwed up a lot. Like I made a lot of mistakes, but I did
I
so,
didn't screw up at all.
yeah, no, screwed up a lot. But it was kind of like, okay, like
Yeah.
it's
It's
still something within my wheelhouse a little bit.
mhm.
So I'm still learning. I keep doing everything I can to get better at what I'm doing. But it was a decision. And part of that was it's just a bucket list dream. I wanted to own my own
Yes.
business, and being a writer entrepreneur kind of fit that.
It's kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
And
think you have way more control. You get
yes,
to choose your covers. You can
yes,
change them if you want to. I have a friend that they changed her title.
I
She
know.
was like, I don't want that title. And I was like, well, you signed the contract, and then you have to read those contracts really well because
Yeah,
they want your digital
they do.
rights
They do.
and your
And
translation rights and your
well,
proof
that was
rights.
some of these contracts. It was like, we want your movie rights. I'm like, well, are you going to try to
Right.
make it
Just in
into a
case.
movie? Like, why do you want the rights? Like, are you gonna go out there and do
Right.
that?
Like maybe
You
if
know,
you're actively checking,
right,
then
right.
maybe, but yeah, they just want the rights. They learned from losing J.K. Rowling's rights, and they they look down on the digital rights for so long. Now they're like, oh,
Yeah, we needed to do that. So I do recommend the Authors Guild is really good. They will do contract reviews. So me coming to this decision wasn't just me reading a contract and being like, this isn't, no, I actually had a real lawyer read it and be like, well,
This is
these are
what
the
you're giving.
disadvantages
Yeah.
of this. And so it kind of just solidified what I had like a gut feeling for, but I really do recommend the Authors Guild before you sign anything because
yes. Good point. Good point. Authors Guild. I will write that down and put it in the links in the show notes below for you guys. So when did you come out? Your first book? Because I have For You, I'd Break. That's the one that's out now, right? Yeah. So what is the first one?
So that's For You, I Break. It's the first one, and it came out July 17th, 2024.
Okay.
Which happened to be my 20th wedding anniversary because I'm really cheesy.
That's awesome. Oh, my husband would have loved that if I had bothered to think about that.
And the local paper even wrote a little story about it, which is still embarrassing my children to this day.
Should be so happy. I know.
So, it was really cute. It was really cute. But
my kids still don't think it's cool. I'm like, your mom's an author, and they're like, you're not famous.
Yeah,
my kids are the worst.
I keep telling mine you can't read them.
Yeah, you're not old enough.
You're not old enough. You can't read them. But they have friends whose moms have read them, and I'm like, okay, but you can't read it. It's not for
you. Can't read it, not right now. No, it does get weird when people read your books, whether or not they are spicy. Because I'm always just like, I don't know if that's your genre, and I don't want you to not like it just because we all know that happens. Like, I just read a review today. It was like, not usually my genre and definitely won't try it again. It was like, well, what? Why are you telling the whole world? Like,
I definitely had a moment where my aunt saw that I was asking for ARC readers and asked for an ARC. And I was like, I said, well, it's spicy. And she was like, that's okay. And I was
you
like,
never know. She's like, I like it too.
Yeah, I know. So I was like, okay. So I sent it to her. She's like, it was fine. I was like, oh my God. But my mom still hasn't read it. I didn't even tell my mom until like way after the first book had been published.
Oh my God.
So I did eventually tell my parents.
Well, you say you're spicy. You're 3. I mean, okay.
So I
what does this mean in the romance world?
Like, the peppers, I would say it's more like 3.5, but I always put it as I would let my aunt read it, but not my mother. But
not my kids.
Not my kids or my mother. So I always say it's spice that is realistic spice. So it's what you would expect of.
So it's on paper sex scenes, but nothing.
Yes, like open door. It is open door, but it's nothing that you wouldn't expect somebody in a new relationship to do.
Okay.
So
it's confusing to lots of people these days. So I write closed door, but that doesn't mean clean. Like, it just, like, I got to the point where I was like, I don't think I can think of another way for people to do what the things that we do.
Yeah.
So I was just like, that's it. I'm done. So, but I've been accused of not being clean. And I was like, I never said that I was clean, because clean comes with no swearing, no alcohol, no smoking, nothing ever, nothing. Yes. And I don't know the difference between clean and sweet. Honestly, I'm in this area because I think readers make up whatever they want to make up, and then they try to tell other readers, and then the authors are like, well, what, like, shouldn't we decide? And the readers are like, no.
And I've seen some reviews of For You, I Break that was like, it was such a sweet romance. I'm like, no,
don't use that word.
But I'm like,
yeah, so they don't know, right?
Thank you. But what they meant by that was that it was sweet in that, like,
sweet and sexy. No.
Yeah. Like it had like, it had emotion and, it's so sweet, but not in.
You don't want the algorithm to pick up that word.
Yes. And so that was like a little bit of a,
it's still a learning process, isn't it? Like,
but, it's, and I do think that I've always been very sex positive in how I talk to my kids. And so I'm not ashamed of it in any way or form. And if you are, then you can't write it. Like,
no,
so it's never really bothered me, but,
no, I write about one of my books. It starts out with a misogynistic, like, that just a-hole. And just to, like, this is what she's dealing with. And that pretty much gets rid of lots of readers of that book. I'm like,
this is realistic. This is how things are. I don't know. I never bothered to think about that as a reader and I never thought about it as a writer. This has really ramped up since COVID, very much.
Well, and I think it has to do with that idea of reader expectation.
Yeah.
Because if a reader is reading an author who they are expecting spice from and they don't deliver, that's
right.
That's bad too. It's like, well, what happened? Like, where did it go?
But it's funny because romance, they would talk about it like how much there was, but there was never, like you said, there was never sex shaming. There was not a lot of kink because that would be like a hold that was called erotica.
Yeah.
And then romance, like you kind of expected it. And sometimes there was a lot and sometimes there wasn't. You know what I mean? Like it just wasn't. I remember being in this romance book club and I was the youngest by like 20 years. And we would always be talking about like, well, one woman would always skip the scenes and she was like, it was great. I didn't have to skip that many this time, whereas like the other people were like, oh, dang it, I wanted more. But it was just in fun, and there was never there was no anger.
I do think it's becoming more defined in a way, just because people, yes and no. I also learned that my definition of vanilla is not everyone's definition of vanilla.
See, that's the problem, right?
And my definition of heat is not everyone's definition of heat. Yeah. So that is an issue where it's like some people are going to read it and be like, this is a 1. And then some people are going to read it and be like, oh my God. Like,
right. And I think that's the biggest issue is everyone's trying to figure out how to communicate to people. And it's just becoming a longer and longer phrase.
Yeah. I always say all heat, no kink, because I don't usually write kink in mine. So that's typically where I define it. But it's interesting. It's one of the questions that I get the most when I'm at a book signing. And you have someone like tottering over and they're like asking a question. They'll be like, how much, how spicy is it? Or, and so then you kind of have to
so hard to answer.
Yeah. And so I said, I'll let my aunt read it, but not my mom. And then that seems to clear it up for a lot of people.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'm going to have to find my definition. My aunt once thought that everything that I wrote was something I had experienced. And I was like, you're no longer allowed to read my books. It's called an imagination.
Yes.
No, I did not live in the 1800s. So just so that you know.
Didn't happen to me.
Didn't happen. So you have come out, when you came out with For You I'd Break, that was July of 2024. So that was a year ago, less than a year ago. And now you've had 2 more come out. So were they all ready? What was your plan for publishing?
Before the first book launched, the other 2 were in different stages. So one had been drafted and was in editing. One had been drafted and hadn't been edited. So they were, I don't want to say that there was a pipeline created, but they weren't just non-existent.
But you had a plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had been, there was rough drafts at least of both of them before the first book came out, which is why the 4th book, there's been a much bigger break. The 3rd book came out in January. The 4th book's coming out in July. So
that's not that big of a break.
No, but it didn't exist until I wrote it.
Oh.
That the actual timeline of getting them drafted, edited, or I want to say more like drafted, reviewed, edited, proofed, that's getting a little bit tighter. So
what was that? You've had 2 experiences now where you had the next one coming. I mean, at least written. A lot of times I hesitate to say that's the worst part. It's not the hardest part is writing. Yes. And then it's slightly less harder to get it edited. Sometimes it really depends on how well that draft is. Right.
So,
but
it's interesting because the first 3 books in the series are 100% a trilogy. They're standalone, but they're all centered around a group of male friends who were in a car accident when they were 18 and their 4th friend passed away. So each of the male leads in those 3 books was in that car accident. So that was a sort of a unifying theme throughout the first 3 books was the loss of their friend, how the accident affected all of their lives because it affected it in very different ways.
Okay.
And so because of that, I already had an idea when I was drafting the first book what the third book was.
What the third book was.
Because
Okay.
they were the same characters. They interact with one another from the beginning to the end. The fourth book that's coming out, this particular character was in the first book, but she was not in that accident. She is, someone that came to the town so that she's in the world, but she's completely separate from that trilogy
Okay.
of loss. And so it's, in some ways it was almost easier because she was coming out of nowhere. But in some ways it was harder because I had written little tidbits about her in all the three books that I then had to make sense of in the end. So, so that was interesting. I was like, okay, so she's someone who likes to sing, but doesn't do it because it makes her very upset. And she has a father serving a life sentence in South Carolina. I was like,
all right, go, brain,
yeah, go. So that was a little bit like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wrote myself into this situation. But it worked out. It worked out fine. But so that's the only kind of interesting thing was hers was completely
like new.
Okay. But the other three, they really did have sort of that continuation, if you will, between the story.
Do they all happen kind of at the same time?
Even the fourth one does. They all are sequential within months of one another.
Good for you. I'm like trying to wrap my head around, I'm plotting out a new series. I'm like, but if it's happening at the same time, I have to remember what happened to the last one. Like, so that's not that easy.
It isn't. And it was very interesting because the bonus epilogue in the first book has a scene in it that is in the third book, but from a different character's point of view. So
look at you.
The bride and groom in the one book is in the epilogue, but then the third book, it's the bridesmaid and a groomsman at the same
Interesting, right?
Yeah. So you kind of knew that.
So you kind of had to have those figured out before you publish them, because otherwise you do write yourself into a corner.
You do, and I actually enjoyed it. Like it was surprisingly nice to put like little Easter eggs, kind of like you knew what you were doing when you would put certain things in.
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun, I think, kind of building that. What happened to this person? And then, you did have to keep going to get to the next character to find that out. But yeah, I mean, I never had thought about doing it. It wasn't completely drafted or outlined with the first book, but in my head, I knew who these people were and where they were going to end up, if that makes sense. So I knew the first book was a second chance romance.
Okay.
And I knew the second one was a friends to lovers. So they had to be friends in the first book. Right. And then the third book was an enemies to lovers. So they had to be enemies in the first book and the second book. So, it kind of like.
It's so funny that you say that, because now all the tropes are talked about. And that's something in the last like 3-4 years. So when I started way back in 2015, like there wasn't as much internet, like I was also like knee deep in diapers with children, but I don't remember any of that being talked about. Like, and of course we only had Facebook and Twitter, and there's only so much time in the day, and we had like writersdigest.com, there was very little else. But it's so funny to now be like how that can be really helpful to be like, oh, I want to do it this one and this, and it can kind of keep you on track.
And I love the romance bookstores. It's really becoming a thing. So like romance only bookstores. There's one in Collingswood called Kiss and Tale, and it was the first romance bookstore in New Jersey. And they have pictures of different tropes, like art all around the walls. And I'm like, it's just hilarious because it's like, exactly what it is. It's like, brother's best friend, like whatever. And you're like, oh, okay. And I talked about sort of in the book I'm writing right now, the letter to the readers, I talked about sort of those expectations and how liberating it was in some ways to know exactly what you're doing or not doing. Right. And I told about the story. I picked up what I thought was a hockey romance, and I'm reading it, and there are multiple points of views from male characters, and I'm very confused. I'm like, is someone going to die? And no one died. It was not what I thought I was picking up. And I was like, oh, this is different. This is not the sweet hockey romance.
Is that Backman's?
Or Why Choose? Okay. No. It's the Why Choose genre. I don't even remember what book it was, but I just remember being like, baffled, like looking at
Yes,
it.
I was pretty baffled by that too. I had to get it
Yeah, I was like,
explained.
wait a minute, why are there two male? How is this gonna work? And I'm
And
like,
then
someone,
then they like their split care personalities
yeah, and you're
basically.
like,
Yeah,
this
there's a
this
whole rule book to that.
right. And so I was out of my genre, right? I was out of my depth. I was like, this is fine, but I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I started reading it.
See,
So
that's how we used to read. We used to pick up a book and be like, "What?"
what? Yeah, there is a lack of surprise.
There is a lot of like,
I don't know if that's like post-pandemic. It's like we've been surprised enough.
yeah, we're done.
We
I
don't need
have a,
any more.
I know. So what was your experience then with now that you're a business owner and you have three books out and now you're still writing the fourth book? Um, how do you manage your time between writing, marketing, selling, being on podcasts?
That's the hard part,
Yeah.
honestly, because it's like I can turn the marketing hat on or the
Because you
writing hat
studied
on.
marketing, right? Sort of.
Right.
Like,
So, I mean,
does
it's
it
always
apply
been
to more?
my day job, right? Like
Mm.
that's always been my day job. So that I don't have a problem with. I cannot draft and edit at the same time. And I
Okay.
don't know
Yeah.
how people do that, where they like, okay, this one's editing, so I'm going to draft another one. And it's like I'm on one book and then I'm on to the next one. I
I
haven't
wonder
been
if
able
they
to
have
do that.
kids.
I don't know.
Most people I've talked to, I don't think they have kids.
And I think too, it's just a different process for me in my mind. So
Yeah.
like editing is very analytical, but it's still in that verbal space where you're, working with words.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm drafting, I try to turn off that analytical piece a little bit and just
Otherwise,
let
you'll never get forward.
right, because you'll just stop every 5 seconds. So part of it, I even name it, if I concur, I call it the SE rough draft. Like when
Yeah.
I'm writing it,
Yeah.
I'm just like, just get it down. Like it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
whatever. And then when you edit it, that's when you have to be really critical and
Well, and the older
yeah.
I get, and the more my kids demand of me, because like teenage, like you'd think that they could do
I
everything
know.
on their own, right? And I'm really big into like we cook dinner and we eat
Mhm.
together and all this. So, it's a little bit of like how I set up my day, but I have to remember what's going on in the manuscript I'm editing in order to come back and continue editing. So
Yeah.
like I can write a short story or I can like journal and I can do other kind of writing, but I've learned that like editing, the shorter amount of time that I can make like on that project, the better because I
And
know what's happening.
I do need to get better at, because I do use alpha readers and I do use beta readers. I need to get better at when I have turned it over to them
And not fiddle with it.
to then go back and actually maybe do something writing related. But honestly, that's when I usually get all the things done that I haven't, you know, like clean. Plan a birthday party. I don't know. But like usually like
Right.
there's like a week or two or three where
You need downtime
yeah,
though.
where it's out of my hands. I'll
Yeah.
do a lot more marketing in
Mm-hmm.
that time. And
So do
I
you
just
think you kind of batch then? Or do you just do
no,
kind
I
of
mean,
whatever
I'm
you
just
can?
totally ADHD and all over the place,
Yeah,
like
me too. I think all
legitimately.
of us are, and that's why it's so hard.
Yeah. I wish I could do that. I really do wish that I had that sort of batch control because everyone says it's the most productive way to do it. Like,
That's what
okay,
I've
I'm doing
heard. Yeah.
social media posts this day. No, I'm just running around. And then they'll be like, oh, schedule your newsletters all at one time, write them all at one time. I'm doing it the night before. Like, like a kid turning in their paper at the last minute.
What I
So
love about doing newsletter swaps, like you and I, is like, okay, you gave me an idea. It is scheduled. This is
yeah,
amazing.
it has to be done. Right. It's like, oh, I told someone that it was going to be on this day. So it has
Then
to
I can
be
get it
done.
done. But if
Yes.
it's mine, I'm like, what am I going to write
And
about?
thank goodness Amazon has like a must upload by this date
Oh
because
my gosh, no kidding.
otherwise
Yes.
it wouldn't work for me. But
I
I've
almost missed my deadline this last time because they kept sending it like 2 weeks before. I'm like, that's so much time.
I know. And then you're like, oh no, it's not.
Then school happens, and you're like, a May release was a dumb idea, but
I know. I don't know why I always and a January release was not smart for me either because then it was like, oh, I just got through the holidays with small
now I have to
children.
work.
No, I have to work. But no, I do think that I wish I was like that. I am
Yeah, the
not, and I don't
batching.
know. I don't know that I ever will be. It's just not how my brain
Yeah,
works.
I know. We should
Um,
probably just accept it.
I'm trying to, like the older I get, I'm trying to, but it is frustrating because in some ways it's a superpower in that if you're under a deadline,
Yeah.
I can like, really focus and hyper focus and get something done. But that whole executive functioning, it's like something's got to give. And it's usually my house. Or like, I haven't forgotten a child yet. I have timers set for those, but
That's what I told someone yesterday. I was
yeah.
like, I have not yet forgotten to pick up a child.
And isn't that horrible? Like, it's a big deal. I'm very proud of this fact,
Me
but
too.
other people are probably like,
What?
how could that happen? But it is definitely like executive functioning challenge and struggle.
Challenge. Yes, it
To,
is. It is a challenge to get the writing, the editing,
yeah.
the planning, the marketing, the selling.
But I wouldn't want a 9 to 5.
I know I wouldn't either. I would drive them
I'm really
insane.
bad. Like when I want to work, I'm working. I always
Yeah.
said I'm not lazy. I'm very hardworking, but I want to work when I want to work. And sometimes that's 5 in the morning, and sometimes that's 10 at night. And it's just
Yep.
whenever, that's when
Yep.
it's happening.
Sometimes it's when the kids are dancing and they're
Yeah.
practicing.
You're in the car waiting for some practice to finish.
So many words in the car.
I definitely have edited in my car. And I was doing like the read aloud for like like really read aloud final proofing. And I was like, oh, I can hear
Yes,
this at
for sure.
lacrosse practice. Like this might not be the best place to do this
You
right
should have
now.
made a TikTok about that. Like, is anyone
Should
listening?
have like I'm in my car, but I love work. I love working in my car. It must be like a mom thing, but like my car, it's like you're set. You can't go anywhere.
You can't see the laundry. That's not
You
folded.
can't see anything. And you're like, well, I'm here for 45, 50 more minutes. And
Exactly.
so I do format in Atticus, which is online. So unfortunately, I have to be connected to the internet if I'm in that
You
stage.
just
But
drive by a Dunkin' Donuts.
yeah, just log in. I need to get a phone with a hotspot. But no, the car is
Yeah, but that's dangerous because then you'll start scrolling,
yeah.
or get the
Yeah.
notifications.
So
There
that's
is
part of
something
it
about,
too.
yeah,
You're in your car. What are you going to do? So
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So you have the fourth one coming out in a month as this
Mhm.
podcast goes out. But right now, everyone can find, are you in KU or are you wide?
I am in KU.
Okay, so everyone can find you on
And
Amazon.
I just did a box set of the first three, and I
Ooh.
don't know why Amazon doesn't seem to want to associate it with me, so it's kind of hard to find. Like you can find books 1, 2, and
We'll
3,
get the
but
links. We'll get
yeah,
the
it's hard to
links.
get the whole. If you only want to do one download, there is like a box set for
All
that.
right.
But
We will
yeah.
I'll get the links from you. I'll put them in the show notes below, but you guys can find Hannah Jordan. These are beautiful covers as well. For You I'd Break, For You I'd Mend, and For You I'd Bloom right now. And you can catch up before the next one comes out.
Yes.
And we'll
Yeah,
get
that
all
was
your follows in the show notes as well.
awesome. And I do know like the covers, we were talking earlier off camera about how sometimes the covers can be like spicy or not spicy. And this was my holdout of it's going to be very vague. Not gonna, it's not gonna look like it. It could be anything.
Well, the
And
trends change. So it
yeah,
is easier to just have vague and be like,
vague
well,
and sort of what is this? And I was very fortunate. I have zero design skills whatsoever. And a friend knew a book cover designer, and that was hooked me up with them because
right.
that is the one thing about being a writer entrepreneur is to know what you can't do.
Yeah.
So I can't copy edit my own stuff. I
No.
copy edit other people's, but I can't copy edit my own.
It's amazing
And
how poorly I copy edit my own stuff.
right? Like I could copy edit someone else's just fine, but not mine.
No, it
So
looks like I don't know grammar.
yeah,
Whenever my proofreader gets it, she's like, "What is wrong with you?"
what is with you? So I do, like I definitely, hire that out and I hire out the covers because I can't do it. Like it's just I don't have that artistic ability and I would just be
Well, and it's what they do. So they just
yeah.
know what's going on. They, instead of you like spending all this time looking at the trends, be like,
Yeah.
well, you should know.
Yeah.
This is what I pay you for.
This is
Here
what
you
it
go.
is. But so yeah, it was, but they're all kind of floral themed. So that's
Yeah, they're
the
beautiful.
first. And then the second,
Beautiful.
it's very moody.
I like moody.
And then the third, which my daughter was like, "Oh, we had crocuses coming up in the spring, and this came up in January." And she was like, "It's your book cover."
Don't read it.
Don't read it. Can't read it. But yeah, so they're all pretty. They're all and I think that was the other really fun thing about transitioning into romances. I just went full girly, like all the way.
Yeah.
Like
We should
pink
just
logo.
embrace it.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? This is fun. Like it's, so it's been quite an interesting year kind of getting
That's so fun.
into the whole new genre and I still love it. Like, I don't know. It's fun reading it as it is to write it. And
Exactly.
never thought I would say that about anything because
Exactly. We got to do what's fun. We welcome you to the indie sphere and the romance.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very
Anytime
happy.
literaries want to come over, we're good. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was so fun to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.